A 17-year-old girl wakes up deep in the Peruvian rainforest, confused and still strapped in an airplane seat. How she found herself in this situation is a miraculous story that you'll not want to miss. Born to German parents in 1954, Juliane was raised in the Peruvian jungle from which she now had to escape. Her father, Hans Wilhelm, was a renowned zoologist, and her mother Maria was a scientist who studied tropical birds. Together, they set up a biological research station called Panguana so that they could immerse themselves in the lush rainforest's ecosystem. Juliane became a self-described jungle child as she grew up on the station. She was homeschooled at Panguana for several years, but eventually went to the Peruvian capital of Lima to finish her education. On Christmas Eve 1971, Juliane and her mother were in Lima, while her dad was in Panguana. They were attending Juliane's Year 12 graduation ceremony. This delay left them with only one option: to take Lancer Flight 508, a turboprop airliner capable of carrying 99 people. Juliane's father, aware of the Lockheed Electric plane's terrible reputation, urged them to find an alternative route. However, with Christmas quickly approaching, they decided to book tickets for their journey back to Panguana. At first, the flight seemed ordinary. However, 15 minutes before their scheduled landing, the sky grew dark, with lightning flashing from all directions. The plane shook violently, causing bags, gifts, and clothing to tumble from overhead lockers. Amidst screams and cries, Juliane witnessed a blinding flash of white light over the plane's wing, seemingly plunging the aircraft into a nosedive. Then, the screams of the other passengers and the thundering roar of the engine seemed to vanish. Juliane found herself outside, exposed to the open air. She hadn't left the plane had left her behind. Juliane, likely the only one in her row wearing a seatbelt, spiraled down into the heart of the Amazon. On the floor of the jungle, Juliane assessed her injuries. Woozy and confused, she suspected she had a concussion. Her collarbone was broken, and she had gashes on her shoulder and calf. She remained there for the rest of the day and the entire night, until the next morning. Without her glasses, Juliane found it difficult to orient herself. Her first priority was to find her mother, and fortunately, her mom Maria had given her a gift that would prove invaluable. Juliane could identify the croaks of frogs and the calls of birds around her. She remembered these sounds from Panguana and realized that she was in the same jungle, not far from home. However, one wrong turn could lead her deeper into the world's biggest rainforest. There was almost nothing her parents hadn't told her about the jungle. She only had to find this knowledge in her concussed head. Juliane finally managed to get up from her plane seat and then stumbled forward blindly. She found a packet of lollies that must have fallen from the plane and walked along a river just as her parents had always taught her. Her father had warned her that piranhas were only dangerous in the shallows, so she opted for midstream, hoping she would eventually encounter other humans. Since much of what grows in the jungle is poisonous, she refrained from touching anything she didn't recognize. On her fourth day trekking through the Amazon, the sound of vultures' calls filled Juliane with fear. The scavengers only circled in great numbers when something had died. The sight of the birds led Juliane to a spooky scene. 3 passengers, still strapped to their seats, had hit the ground with such force that they were half buried in the earth. One of the passengers was a woman, and Juliane inspected her toes to check if it was her mother. When she saw that the woman's toes were polished, she took a deep breath. Her mother never used nail polish. Julianne could hear rescue planes searching for her, but the forest's thick canopy kept her hidden. By the 10th day, she was sunburned, starving, weak, and ready to give up. The icy rain soaked Julianne's thin summer dress, and the wind made her shiver to the core. However, around a bend in the river, she saw her salvation. A small hut with a palm leaf roof. The next day, she awoke to the sound of men's voices and rushed from the hut. The local Peruvian fishermen were terrified by the sight of the skinny, dirty blonde girl, but Julianne's parents had given her one final key to her survival. They had taught her Spanish. The fishermen treated her wounds, gave her food, and took her back to civilization. The day after her rescue, she finally saw her father. For the next few days, Julianne's father frantically searched for news of his wife. On January 12, 1972, they finally found her body and discovered that she had also survived the crash, but was so badly injured that she couldn't move. Unfortunately, she passed away several days later. Now a biologist, Julianne sees the world as her parents did. She grew up to be a scientist renowned for her study of bats. She still runs Panguana, her family's legacy that proudly stands in the forest that transformed her.